there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, chapter 22. Chapter 22, verse 1. Now, well, let's see. Vaidaber David Lashem es divrei ashiru azos. David said to Hashem the words of this song, Biyom hitzil Hashem oso, on the day that Hashem saved him, mikaf kol oivav, from the hand of all of his enemies, mikaf Shaul, and from the hand of Shaul. The Radak says that this song of praise that David composes to Hashem is at the end of David's life. Now, what does it mean on the day that God saved him from all of his enemies and from Shaul? It's been many days since God saved him from Shaul. So the Radak says, I mean, unfortunately, we know it hasn't been many days since he got saved from another enemy. It seems he went from one problem to another. The Radak says that the reference to Shaul here is to show that all of the tsaros he had from all of his different combatants and problem creators for him, when you put them all together, that equals the problems, the difficulties he had from Shaul. It's a little sad. Verse 2, Vayomar, he said, Hashem sali mutsudasi mafalti li. God is my, I'm just going to mute everybody. God is my rock and my fortress and the one to whom I go for refuge. And the Radak says the point is that whenever David was in danger from enemies, he could always turn to Hashem, and that Hashem would make sure it would work out. Verse 3, Elokei tzuri echasebo, the God of my rock, the God of my support, I yearn to him. Magini, he is my shield. V'keren yishi, and my salvation. Miskabi, he is my fortress. Umnusi, he is the one to whom I run. Moshiyi, he saves me. Mechamas toshieni, from he will save me from wrongdoing. Keren is a language of like glory. We talk about a semach keren David Avdecha. The Radak has an interesting language. The Radak says that Keren also means a horn. So he says the idea is it's a language of strength. That, in other words, an animal with a horn, I guess it's apropos for this time of year, but an animal with a horn, in other words, attacks. And it's so on the one hand, the horn, like, raises high above the animal and you can see it from a distance and it's like elevation, but it's also a source of strength. So the Radak says that's the significance of the word Keren. Verse 4, Muhulal ekra Hashem, I will call out to God as the God worthy of praises, which of course is so powerful for David HaMelech to be saying, because David HaMelech is the one who writes Sefer Tehillim. If, this is how the Radak explains the pasuk, if I call out to God and I sing God's praises, that is a merit that I'll be saved from my enemies. Verse 5, Ki afafuni mishbrei maves, when the calamities of death, the terrible difficulties that could lead to death surround me, nach lev lial yivasuni, the rivers of immorality frighten me. Okay, so I just want to talk about this pasuk a little bit. The Radak says that the mishbrei maves are the things that break me, that bring me close to death. In other words, that these are the difficulties that just totally break a person's confidence, totally break a person's fortitude, and they could break a person so badly that they could bring a person to death. And then, so when I'm surrounded by those things, and I'm become terribly afraid from the rivers of problems that the wicked people around me bring my way. Verse 6, Chavlei Sha'ol Sabuni, the pains associated with the depths, meaning death, surround me. Kidmuni mokshe maves, the hardships that lead to death, confront me. Verse 7, Batsar li ekra Hashem. At a time where I have this great distress, I call to God. V'elelokai ekra. And I call out to my God. Vayishma mehecholo koli. And he hears my voice from his abode. V'shavosi ba'oznav. And my cries are in his ears. I just want to reflect on this pasuk for a moment. First of all, this idea that when a person has difficulty, the Jewish, obviously we need to put forth effort, and obviously there are ways that we can help ourselves, and God helps those who help themselves. We believe in all of that. But the concept that part of the Jewish response to danger and difficulty is to daven is such a powerful idea. You know, there's a famous machlokas rishonim. What is the Torah's model for when you daven? So, so one of the opinions of the Rishonim is that a person needs to daven every day. That it's a mitzvah from the Torah. A person needs to daven in some. Obviously, the Torah doesn't have in mind the siddur per se. The Torah predates the siddur significantly. But the point is, a person has to daven in some way to Hashem, at least at a Torah level. There's another opinion in the Rishonim that the model of prayer in the Torah is when one has difficulty. When one has a problem, when one needs a salvation, there's a Torah mitzvah to daven to Hashem. And it's a fascinating thing to think about, because I think we have a way of thinking that the idea of davening to Hashem is like God gives us an escape hatch. You know, it's really scary. Who knows what's going to happen? Well, I've got God in my corner and I can daven to Hashem. But we're saying something greater than that. So I think that's just one thing that David HaMelech, who has been through so much and has such a connection to expressing himself to Hashem, that he says that like a core aspect of his connection with God is specifically that he calls out to God when he's in distress. I also think it's very interesting. I'm not exactly sure what to make of it, but I'll just share with you what, my just personal guess. So it talks about Hashem and it talks about Elokai. Both of these languages. In my distress, I will call out to Hashem and I'll call out to my God. So I think there are two things going on here. So one thing I think is going on is Hashem is really only personal on the national scale. In other words, Hashem connotes, the Jewish God. And that's great. But it's one of these feelings like, do I think God really cares about me? So he says both. He says, I call out to the God of the Jews and I call out to my God. Very personal. And then look at what it says at the end of verse 7. My cries are in his ears. I have absolute confidence that he hears me. I have absolute confidence that he's thinking of me. An interesting thing to think about. Verse 8. So now that I have these problems, now God is going to respond for me. So the earth trembles. Mostos hashamayim yirgazu. The foundations of the heavens will shake. All of this is happening because God has become agitated. And why is God becoming agitated? Because I have a problem. Verse 9. Allah ashan ba'apo. Smoke has come in the nose of God. Now, obviously, God doesn't have a nose. But the point is that God's wrath has been aroused against his enemies, against my enemies. V'yesh b'piv tochel. And there's a consuming flame coming from his mouth. Gechalim bo'aru mimenu. It's like coals are burning from him. Verse 10. Vayet shamayim vayerad. God comes down from the heavens. Again, all of this is kaviyachol, as if, but va'arafel tachas raglav, and the smoke is under his legs. Verse 11. Vayokav al kruv vayaof. He rides on the cherub and he flies. Vayeruach kanfi ruach, and God presents himself on the wings of the winds. Verse 12. Vayoshes choshech svivosav sukos. And then he places darkness all around him. This is on his enemies. Chashras mayim avei shchakim. There's a tremendous abundance of water and clouds. In other words, it's like this foreboding context around the enemies. Verse 13. Minoga nekdo. On the other hand, there's a light opposite him. The light opposite him is for those who love him. But while there's a light for those who love him, this other Radak explains it, while there's a light for those who love him, fiery coals are burning against his enemies. From that very light, it's a fascinating thing to think about. That very light, that's the source of courage and warmth for God's people, is the very same flame that terrifies God's enemies. Verse 14, Yarei min shamayim Hashem. God will consume them from heaven, v'oyon yitain kolo, and from above he provides his voice, his roar. Verse 15, vayishlach chitzim vayfitzeim. God sends down his arrows, he spreads them out. Barak vayahom. He sends down his lightning, and it causes great trepidation. Verses 16. Vayiro afike yom, yigalu mostos tevel. The waves of the ocean appear, and the depths of the sea are revealed. All of these miracles of nature and fearful pictures are all coming b'garas Hashem, with the roar of God, and nishmas ruach apo, from the breath of his spirit. Verse 17. Yishlach mimarom yikacheni. He will send down from above, he will take me. Yamsheni mimayim rabim. He will move me out of the midst of many waters. Rashi, such an interesting comment from Rashi. Rashi says this pasuk, again, now all of a sudden, David got very personal, right? In other words, he talks about me in this pasuk. So Rashi says this is a reference to Shaul being about to kill David. One of the stories we have with David and Shaul is that David was in a very susceptible locale, and Shaul was about to track him down. And then all of a sudden, some messenger comes running to Shaul that there's, I think it was something with the Plishtim, so it was a good guess, but there's some other military issue going on elsewhere. So Shaul had to rush away and search for David another day. So the Rashi says that's what David HaMelech is talking about in this pasuk. We're on chapter 22, verse 17. It says that he will send from above and he'll take me. It's like I'm totally surrounded by waters. There's no escape. And all of a sudden, God pulls me out. Verse 18. Yatzileni me'oivi oz. He will save me from my enemy. He'll be a source of strength. Sorry, I think that's me'oivi oz. He'll save me from my strong enemy. Sorry about that. Misonai. He will save me from those who hate me. Ki amtsumi many. They're too strong for me. I have no hope. But God saves me. Verse 19, Yikadmuni biyomedi. They will confront me on the day of my movement, the Radak explains. He's saying Adi is referring to, is connected to like Nav and Nod, on the day that I move around. Vayi Hashem bishanli. And God will be a support to me. Verse 20, Vayotzei la merchav osi. He will bring me out to a wide area. In other words, I'm totally confined. I'm totally constricted. I'm totally trapped. God will pluck me out of that, and God will bring me to a wide open space. Yechaltzeini. He'll save me. Ki chafetz bi. Because he desires me. He cares about me. Verse 21. Yigmaleni Hashem Kitzidkasi. God will reward me like my piety. Kivur Yodai, like the purity of my hands, like the cleanliness of my hands. Yashivli, he will respond to me. Rashi says that David HaMelech is saying that he believes he was saved in the merit of the time that he tore Shaul's cloak and didn't kill him. If you remember that story, if you remember, David's own men were very upset at him. You know, that Shaul was susceptible to David that time. And David could have killed him, and he just tears his cloak. So David says that my miraculous salvation later, he feels, was in the merit of him deciding not to kill Shaul. Now, what is David saying here? Is David saying, hey, I'm one great guy, you know, God rewarded me? I don't think that's what he means. I actually think he's making a very inspiring and meaningful statement, a very reflective statement, which is that he so feels that God is with him that first of all, he doesn't think anything is a fluke. Anytime he's saved from a difficult situation, he believes it's the hand of God, and he feels God is so interested in him that it's only because he made the right decision at a given moment that he merited to be saved. Verse 22. Ki shamarti darchei Hashem. I observed, I watched the paths of God. V'lo rashati me'elokoi. And I didn't act more wickedly than my God. Now, what does that mean? So the Radak says it's like I made sure to stay on God's path. You know, I envisioned the path that God wanted me to take. And of course, sometimes the path is very narrow. Sometimes the path is pretty wide. But I always stayed on the path. And I never veered off of the path of what I felt God wanted from me. Verse 23. Kichol mishpatav l'nagdi. All of God's laws were opposite me. I had all of them on my mind. V'chukosav lo asur mimena. And I will not turn away from the laws of Hashem. Verse 24. V'eya samim lo. I will be pure to Hashem. V'eshtam ramei avoni. And I will be guarded from my sin. I believe in God. I'm motivated to serve God, and I'm motivated to keep on keeping the halachos, even though I'm in ridiculously scary situations. Verse 25, Vayashav Hashem li k'tzidkasi. But I believe that when I keep on surviving, it's a reward for my piety. Kivori l'neged einav. He sees me. He's watching me. He's watching my purity. Just want to see what's in this chat. That's an interesting point, Elaine. I'll tell you what I think. I could be wrong, and I'm certainly. Elaine's question basically is: we certainly know that David HaMelech wasn't perfect. So what is he talking about? You know, God is rewarding my piety. So I want to give you two possibilities. Thank you for raising this point. I don't know if I'm right about either one of them. I'm certainly open to other people's thoughts. So one possibility is I think David HaMelech is really focused right now on the scary times, on the times where he was on the run. And the truth is, to the best of my recollection, all the examples that we have of the missteps of David HaMelech are not during the dangerous moments. In other words, during the dangerous moments, he really seems very focused. I mean, besides running all over the place, the most stark things we have are his insistence on not killing. Running to Nov, he was running for his life. I don't think we would say that. Again, we had last week, I believe it was, that there was somebody who personally bore an enmity towards David because he felt that Nov was all David's fault. I don't think we would say that David was sinful in going to Nov. I think we might say that it was an error on his part Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know what his alternatives were, to be honest with you, but I'm not aware of calling it a sin by David. I don't remember us saying that. He certainly didn't mean for them to get in trouble. And by the way, they only got, it was only because there was this Doeg there who reported. That's one possibility. Thank you, Elaine. That's one possibility. The other possibility that, and back to your question of what does he mean by piety? The other possibility, and I think this is something that's very worthy of us to reflect on at this time of year, and hopefully gives us some strength and encouragement. And that is, none of us are perfect, and none of us are so awful. We're all something in between. Okay, and God rewards our goodnesses. God also happens to punish for our misdeeds, but I'm not sure he means that I never did anything wrong. But what I think he means is he really feels that, especially when he was on the run, he really rose to the occasion in terms of keeping an ethical standard. And he believes he's being rewarded for those decisions. Are there other decisions that he made in his life that he believes he was punished for? Absolutely. So my gut tells me the first thing, actually, more than the second thing. But if anyone else has any thoughts on this, I'm certainly happy to hear it. Okay. Verse 26. Im chasid tischasad. With a pious one, you will act with, excuse me, piety. That was a dramatic sneeze. Im gibor tamim titamam. If with a person of purity, you will be pure. Im navar, with a person of cleanliness, it doesn't mean cleanliness in terms of hygiene. It means cleanliness in terms of, that everything is beyond reproach. Titavar, you will be clean. Vimikesh, titapol. And with a curved person, a treacherous person, you will act in a curved way. Rashi says that in verse 26 and 27, it talks about the chassid, the gibor tamim, and the navar. These are all very nice adjectives to say about a person. Rashi says these three models of people who are good in this world, you'll be good to them because they're good. Rashi says this is a reference to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And on the other hand, Rashi says the ultimate example of the curved person that you act in a treacherous way with, says Rashi, is Paro. Which presumably the reason why we're choosing Paro, is because he really made a fool of Paro in terms of hardening his heart and the plagues, etc. But it's very much, depending on how you learn the story with Paro, it's very much along this model. In other words, if I remember correctly, it's Rashi who says that the first 5 of the Makos, Paro didn't need any help hardening his heart. Paro hardened his own heart. Paro was stubborn on his own. So God is saying, yeah, you're going to be stubborn? I'll help you out. I'll follow the same path, even though you wouldn't have at this point. So it's really very much what he's talking about. Verse 28. Ves amani toshia. You will save the humble nation. Veinecha al ramim tashpil. And your eyes on the lofty ones will lower. A little bit of a difficult phrase. The Radak says that you will continue to gaze at the people who are lofty and high and mighty until you see to it that they're lowered. Verse 29. Ki atoni ri Hashem. You are my candle, God. V'Hashem yagia chashki. And God lights up my darkness. Verse 30. Kivcha arutz gedud. In you, I will run a whole legion. Belokai, Adalig Shur. If for the sake of my God, I would jump over a wall. Verse 31. Hakel Tamim Darko. God's path is pure, is perfect. Radak says that what it means that his path is perfect, it's like we say Hatsur Tamim Palo, that the rock, his action is perfect. Radak says the pshat is that everybody gets their exact due. Everybody gets exactly what is fair for them. It's an amazing thing for David HaMelech to say that after everything that he's experienced. But he says, Hashem, I don't know why I've experienced all this, but all I know is if it's happening in my life, it's because it's supposed to happen. Imras Hashem Tzrufa, the declaration of God is refined. Mogenhu l'chol hachosimbo. God is a shield to all those who strive to him. Verse 32. Ki mi keil mibaladei Hashem. Who is powerful other than God? Umitzur mibaladei Elokeinu. And who is a rock other than our God? The Radak says that when my enemies see that I overcome them, they should be inspired to believe more in God. Verse 33. Hakel ma'uzi choyil. The God of my strength. Vayater tamim darki. And he makes my path smooth. God gives me strength, and in situations where I feel like, how am I going to get from A to B? He makes it the path is smooth, though it didn't seem it would be that way. Verse 34. Mishaver raglov kayalos. He evens out his legs like the rams. Val ba mosai yamideni. He'll position me on my heights. In other words, the point is that he'll, the same way that the large animals have the ability to just tread through, and if there's bumps or things on the ground, it really doesn't matter. That's how God makes the path for me. Verse 35. Milamed yadai lemilchama. He makes my hands prepared for war. V'nichas keshes nechusha zroosai. He provides like a bow of iron by my arms. He puts me in a position that I can have tremendous military success. Verse 36, Vatiten li mogen dishecha, you give me your shield of salvation. Va'anoscha tarbeni. Anoscha is an interesting word. So one pshat the Radak says is like to be honest, to answer. So what you say to me, presumably through the prophets, maybe sometimes through the Ramatumim, gives me strength. Or anoscha, says the Radak, means like anava, humility. That your humility fortifies me. Presumably it means that your willingness to involve yourself with me, with little old me, which is so humble of you, that fortifies me. Verse 37, Harchiv tzadi tachteni. You'll make it that my steps under me are wide. And I won't stumble. In order to allow me to walk with confidence and that things work out for me. Verse 38, I will chase my enemies and I will conquer them. And I won't return until I've destroyed them. Verse 39, I will wipe them out, they won't rise up. They will fall under my feet. Verse 40, you gird me with strength for war. Those who rise up against me, you will bow them under me. Verse 41, you have given it to me that my enemies give me the back of their neck, meaning, they flee from me. That I successfully wipe out my enemies. Verse 42, Yishu v'ein Moshiach. they'll call out, my enemies, who you helped me defeat, my enemies will call out, and there'll be no one to save them. El Hashem. They'll even call out to God. V'lo anam. But God won't answer them. The Radak says that even if they call out to God, they're not sincerely with him. Verse 43, V'eshchakem ka'afar oretz. I will grind them up like the dirt of the earth. Ketit chutzos adikem erkoem. Like plaster, I'll crush them. Verse 44, Vatfalteni me rive ami. This is a very poignant pasuk. You save me from the fights within my own nation. You know, we'd like to feel like all the enemies he's talking about are the bad guys from other nations. Lav dafka, not only from other nations, whether it be Doeg, whether it be Achitophel, whether it be Shaul, from my own people. And that, of course, is a unique kindness. It's one thing a person believes that God is looking out for him because he's a member of Klal Yisrael, but he believes that God is looking out for him against other Jews. Tishmereni l'rosh goyim, you will guard me at the head of nations. Am lo yadati yavduni, people who I don't even know, they'll serve me. You'll bring me so much success. Verse 45, B'nei nechar yiskachashu li. Strangers will lie to me. Lishmoa ozen yishamu li. For the sake of being able to hear the ear, they will make themselves heard by me. The Metzudas David explains that what it means that they'll lie is it just shows how afraid they are. And as they try to figure out what are the answers that David wants to hear. Verse 47. Chai Hashem uvaruch tzuri. God lives. Blessed is my rock. And this is presumably a tremendous praise of God. That the point is his presence is so clear in my world. V'yarum elokei tzur yishi. And the God, the rock of my salvation, will be elevated. Verse 48. Hakel anosein nekamosli. The God who gives vengeance to me. Umorid amim tachteni. And he fells other nations under me. Verse 49. Umotzi me'oivoi. He takes me out from among my enemies. Umikamai teromameni. He raises me up among those who rise up against me. He raises me up above those who rise up against me. Me'ish chamasim tatzileni. From people of wrongdoing, you save me. Verse 50. And therefore, for all these reasons, I praise you, God, among the nations. And I will sing to your name. Magdil Yeshuos Malko. You magnify the salvations of his king. God magnifies the salvations of his king. The Radak explains his king is David. I am God's chosen king, and he brings me remarkable salvations. And he does kindness for his anointed one. The David ulizaro. For David, that's me, and all of his offspring. Ad olam, eternally. That's the song of praise of David, of trying to encapsulate. Of course, he wrote all of Sefer Tehillim, but trying to encapsulate in this parak just an expression of tremendous thanks and gratitude to God for miraculously saving him from so many calamities and so many difficulties and bringing him such success, whether it be on the battlefield, whether it be in the courtroom of public opinion among the Jewish people. Any comments? Thank you, Elaine. This is at the end of his life. I don't think he means to say that all of his offspring were saved, because obviously we know that's not the case. I think what he means is the long game. In other words, that I think what he means by offspring here is the Davidic line, that he believes that God has provided him great salvation, and that salvation will extend to those who rule after him, his descendants. I think that's what he really means. I'm open to other suggestions, but I think that's what he means. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. I don't think we'll go until 9 tonight. I'm amazed at all you people whose videos are on that I haven't put you to sleep yet. I know it's a little bit of a drier, but I think it's a beautiful song in its own right. Chapter 23, verse 1. Ve'ele divrei David u'acharonim. These are the last words of David. Now, it's not really the last words of David. So what do we mean? He said these are the last words of David. So Radak says that these are the last words that he said with a divine inspiration. Interesting thing. Nu'um David ben Yishai. So says David, the son of Yishai. U'nu'um hagever hukam ol. And so says the man who was established above. The Radak says, meaning, kind of he had this standing, this elevated standing of being the king. Mashiach Elokei Yaakov, the anointed one of the God of Yaakov, Uneim Smiros Yisrael, and the composer of the songs of Israel. By the way, this statement about the composer of the songs of Israel, Ne'im is a language of pleasantness, the person who brought out the sweetness of the songs of Israel. The Radak says, as I'm sure you surmised, and I'm not reading this text yet, this chat yet, but maybe this is what you're saying also. The Radak says that this refers to the fact that he composed Sefer Tehillim, that these would be sung in the Beis Hamikdash, that he understood these would be sung down the road.
That was my question. What's the chronological order?
Oh, I think Sefer Tehillim is being written throughout his life.
And
I think Sefer Tehillim is being written throughout his life.
But if there were Tehillim written after this, they weren't divinely inspired?
I would assume there weren't any Tehillim written after this.
Okay, so that's the question. Yeah.
Now, there is one parak of Tehillim that's very, very similar to the previous chapter, which we learned. I'm blanking out on which parak it is, but there is a parak of Tehillim. The Radak makes that point. But so it could be that was composed near the end of his life, but I would assume on the timeline that there's nothing in Tehillim after this point in time. Yeah, thank you. There's a very interesting Malbim on this pasuk, and this, by the way, has so much to do with, Debbie, what you were just bringing up. So he says, when it refers to himself as David ben Yishai, that's a reference to the Tehillim that he composed before he became the king, when he was just David ben Yishai. When it refers to himself as Hukam Ol, the person was established above, those are the Tehillim that he said that he composed when he was the king of Israel. And when it refers to himself as Ne'im Zmiros Yisrael, those are the chapters of Tehillim that he composed, really not about himself, really just sort of the Jewish experience, the national experience. It's a very interesting perspective in the Malbim. Gila?
Remind me, Shmuel Aleph was written by Shmuel Hanavi, right?
Yes.
Who wrote Shmuel Bet? I know it's really all one sefer, but right.
So if I'm not mistaken, I want to say that after Shmuel died, Nasan wrote the rest of Shmuel. Am I? If someone knows if I'm right or wrong, please feel free to jump in. I thought that was what we said. I thought we said that Nasan Hanavi wrote the rest. I believe that's what I've seen elsewhere. That Nasan Hanavi wrote the rest of Shmuel after Shmuel dies.
And Natan's the prophet who chastised him about Bathsheba. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Verse 2. But this would be an expression of what, in other words, this is a recording of what David's own words were. These psukim here. Verse 2. Ruach Hashem tiber bi. The Spirit of God spoke within me. The Radak says that the Tehillim. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Freundel. Mrs. Freundel saying that she remembered it saying Shmuel and his entourage. Siato is like his assistants.
Huh.
Yeah. Which I guess it's not impossible that Nasan could be included in that. It could be I just dreamt this up about Nasan. There's a lot of things that I dream up, but okay. As I tell people, the key is just to say it with confidence. Okay, so in verse 2, so Ruach Hashem diber bi, that the Spirit of God spoke within me. Again, this is really David speaking about his authorship of Sefer Tehillim. Umilaso al lashoni, and his words were on my tongue. That's when I compose Tehillim, it's really God speaking through me. The Malbim has a very nice idea over here. He says, and anyone, I don't know if any of you are composers in any way or poets or whatever it is, but he says the first phrase is the general inspiration. The general inspiration for a given parak of Tehillim, that spirit came from God. But it's a separate bracha that even the word choice came from God. In other words, you could have a situation where a person feels that their idea was divinely inspired, but the words are, the words are just words. But he's saying that he feels that he's expressing, and again, he's saying this is a real thing. I mean, we treat Sefer Tehillim as a very holy book. He's expressing that the ideas were divinely inspired, and even the word choice was divinely inspired. Verse 3, Amar Elokei Yisrael, the God of Israel said, Li diber to Yisrael. The Rock of Israel spoke to me. Meaning, says the Radak, that Hashem spoke to Shmuel Hanavi for my sake, that to convey to me that Moshel Ba'adam, that I should be a governor over man. Tzaddik, it should be a righteous person. Moshel Yiras Elokim. The Radak explains that my exceptionalism, thank you, my exceptionalism should express itself in my reverence for God. It's a very interesting thing to think about. That what? Again, we've had many leaders, even in Tanakh, we've had many Jewish leaders. But what makes a Jewish leader great? Or what are we looking for in a Jewish leader? Maybe to say it slightly differently. And the implication from this passage is we're looking for someone who lives with their own reverence for God. If the person who we're looking up to can have his own piety, then it energizes all of the people. Verse 4. Uchor boker yizrach shamesh. My kingdom, the Sadradak explains it, my kingdom should shine like the light of the morning. Boker lo avos. We're not talking about a morning of clouds. Minoga mimotar desha me'aretz. No precipitation, just a clear shining of the sun. That should be the clarity of my kingdom. Ki lo chen beisi im kale. The governance of my house is not like my governing in reverence for God. Kivris olam samli, an eternal covenant he placed for me. Arucha v'kol shmura, totally arranged. Ki cho yishi v'cho chayfetz, ki lo yatzmiach. That all of the salvation that will come will not come from anyone other than me and my family. Verse 6, Uvlial kakotz munad kuloam. The wicked people, the immoral people, they'll be like thorns that need to just be removed. Kilo v'yad yikachu. Kilo v'yad yikachu. They won't successfully take in their hand. They won't be able to take the reins of power. V'ish yiga bohem. One will strike out at them. Yimolei varzel ve'etz chanis. Will take iron and strong wood. Uva'esh sarof yusarfu bashavas. Anyone who tries to strike out at my kingdom, the ones who come after me, there will be those who will rise up to defend us. Obviously, David HaMelech has had many challenges in his kingdom, but it's always worked out. And that seems to be connecting this pasuk to the song of praise that we spent most of the night with. And that seems to be the end of the words of David's divine inspiration. Any comments? Okay, I think this is a good place to stop. We are not going to meet next week. I'm sorry. I have an open house on the teacher end. So I'm skipping an open house on the parent end tonight, but on the teacher end, but on the teacher end, I have an open house next week. So we won't meet next week, but I do believe that still leaves us one more week, God willing, before Rosh Hashanah, right? So we won't meet the 6th, but God willing, we will meet the 13th. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
you.
Good night.
Thank you.